Welcome everyone back to the channel. We are sitting down today with Graham Allcott, who is productivity coach, consultant extraordinaire, author of How to Be a Productivity Ninja, the founder of Think Productive, host of the Beyond Busy podcast. You do a little bit of everything. So in your own words, can you tell us what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Think Productive. So we've been going since 2009. And essentially what we're about is going into companies and helping them to make space for what matters and to be more productive in the work that they do. And so we run a whole range of workshops around that. And then in more recent years, I've been doing the Beyond Busy podcast. So it's a podcast all around exploring ideas around productivity, but also about work-life balance and how people define happiness and the kind of tensions that exist between those things. I'm probably best known for How to Be a Productivity Ninja, which is my book.
For a lot of us who are starting to go into this new remote work, how to go about that without totally losing control?
I've been pretty much fully remote working for the best part of a decade. So where I'm talking to you from right now is the office at the bottom of my garden. So I lovingly refer to it as the shed, but it's a sort of purpose-built garden office with Wi-Fi and everything else. But this is my main place of work. So whilst I'm going around and doing talks and traveling and lots of other stuff, my main workspace is at the bottom of my garden. I think a lot of people have struggled to adapt to it because it just feels so different. And I think there's a lot of the standard rhythms that we'd have in a normal workday are kind of taken away. So even just, whilst people don't enjoy commuting, the process of a commute allows you to start to get your head into work mode. So by the time you arrive at the office, you're sort of in a different headspace. You have the commute at the end of the day to decompress, lunch hour in the middle of the day, certain recurring meetings. There's a whole rhythm to office life, which, people feel has been sort of taken away. I feel like it's really useful, firstly, to think about what's contained within that you might need to replicate or do differently. So, for example, a lot of people working from home have, particularly in lockdown countries too, found that they're just doing a lot less exercise, a lot less walking around. There's not the walking between meetings. There's not the walking out to get a sandwich at lunchtime. It's just in your kitchen. All these things have changed. So I think, working out what those things are and how you can replace them is definitely a big part of it. I think the most important thing when we think about productivity is about how we manage our attention. And I have this thing in Productivity Ninja where I say that there are 3 types of attention. So you have proactive attention, the times in your day, 2 to 3 hours in your day, typically where you're most switched on, energetic, alert, able to do the most difficult stuff on your list. At the other end of the scale, you have a couple of hours of inactive attention, which is the times when you're sitting at your desk and you're scrolling up and down the email inbox and it's like the lights are on but no one's home, right? We all have that sort of feeling. And then there's active attention, just a bit in the middle. But when you work from home, you tend to have more autonomy over how you spend that proactive attention time. So if you can really use that in a way that really benefits your own work, rather than losing some of that time to being stuck in meetings, being sort of compelled to do the emails because it seems like what you should do at the start of a day. We can just make better decisions around how we manage our attention.
Yeah, I feel like one of the cruxes of modern work life is this feeling that when you start your workday, you have to start with email checking. Because that's where things might have collected overnight that might require your attention. But this goes in direct contradiction to this proactive attention span, which might be more available in the morning. And so you're spending your key hours on tasks that maybe aren't those tasks that are most important for you.
People feel quite compelled to sort of start their day with, what's changed, what's new. Right, it just feels like the most important, urgent sort of question to answer. There's two things we can do. One is the slightly more philosophical take on it, which is think of email not as your list of priorities, but as the list of everybody else's priorities. So if you start with that, then that will help to change that habit and change that process. I think the slightly more tactical, cheap thing to do is just allow yourself a structured period of time to emergency scan. So typically what I'll do often in the morning is I will open the email inbox early, but I'll look at it for no more than like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, that's happened. Okay, that one I need to do later, just to see what's going on. And that can often be useful because it helps you to kind of reassure your own brain that like nothing has blown up that I don't know about. Yeah. Everything's okay, and I can come back to the rest of it later.
What else? What is the most common kind of, I don't know, error or habit that you come across that you would like to fix?
I'd say that probably the biggest barrier to good productivity, or if you feel like you're good at productivity, the biggest barrier to great productivity is always just a lack of clear thinking. So I think there's always this sense that to get better at productivity, it's about like, you know, downloading apps or getting organized, or, you know, like people, you know, take productivity in so many multiple ways. But I think what it always boils down to for me is, are you clear about where you're going, and are you clear about what's the next step to get there? It's amazing to me that very sophisticated people working on very, you know, complex, expensive projects often don't know the answer to those questions, or they know the answer, but when you ask 3 or 4 people who work on the same thing, they've got a very different expectation of what the vision is, or a very different expectation about what the next step might look like. So I think, you know, for me, that's a huge sort of guide in everything we do, is helping people towards specificity. I can't always say that word. But yeah, getting more specific, getting clearer, and really getting into the, you know, help people to get into the granular details of how to define the end goal of a project, and the granular details of exactly how am I going to start, like what's the next step I need to do. That for me tends to be where momentum comes from. Like once you know those things, there's energy behind what you're doing.
One thing that we've found a lot of companies are struggling with at the moment is finding that accountability with their teammates, who maybe that accountability was built into the office atmosphere, and being able to look over and see that your colleague is at their desk doing their work, and now they're unable to see those colleagues and feel that accountability, or that feeling that other people are also doing work at the same time. Do you have any suggestions as to how to deal with this challenge?
So I think a lot of this comes down to culture, right? And I think culture exists generally in people and in spaces. So you still have people as a way to build accountability, build trust, but you no longer have physical spaces. So I think you can replace some of those spaces. I think you know, tools like Slack, which we use within Think Productive, can actually replicate a lot of the sort of more cultural aspects of being in an office together. And our team literally work, you know, all around the world, Australia, North America, you know, the whole, like there isn't a time zone really where like we don't have team members. You know, like Slack kind of never sleeps, right? Because there's people sort of posting on there at kind of all hours of our day and night. But I think, you know, using some of those kind of tools can really help. The other thing potentially is just changing up some of the routines that you might have around like all hands meetings or huddle meetings and those kind of things, using those a bit more to perhaps kind of hold people a bit more accountable. And I think, again, you know, coming back to what I was talking about before you worry too much about how to hold people accountable, I'd ask the bigger questions about, do you know, like, accountable for what, right? It's that old thing of don't ask yourself like, am I busy? Ask myself, what am I busy about, right?
I've heard of other companies using their Slack channels and having a policy of when you kind of arrive at your computer for your day of work, just like say hi in the chat, similarly as you would when you walk into an office. You'd say good morning to everyone.
So we've had members of our team at Think Productive who have realized that they work really well much earlier in the morning. So starting at 6 or 7 a.m. and then having a little nap after lunch, right? And then doing a bit more work. And so just working a bit more flexibly. Now, I think when you start remote working, one of the benefits is that you increase that flexibility. But what that means is you don't necessarily always have everybody logging on at 9 a.m. And saying hi, like all at the same time, or logging off at the same time. There's like a balance to be struck there between like creating some windows around collective experience, everybody doing things at the same time, and then also giving people the flexibility and autonomy to do their own thing at different times. And so as long as that check-in at 9 a.m. isn't being used as like a, who's not out of their pants yet sort of monitoring system, I think that's healthier.
I mean, let's shift more to a personal productivity aspect. Would you consider yourself a productive person? You do so many different things. How do you keep on top of it all?
Short answer is yes. I would consider myself a productive person, and I'd probably be. It would probably be terrible of me to say no. I just teach everybody else how to be productive, but I'm actually rubbish myself. But the slightly longer, more complicated answer is productivity is not something that came naturally to me at all. So my natural style around work is kind of strategic, ideas-y, not in the detail, not in the delivery and execution. And I really had to learn that. And then I think what I found was that because I think for a while I kind of felt like I had some kind of personal deficiency, which made me really disorganized and sort of my natural style of things just too messy and sort of crazy making. And then once I'd figured it out and started to fix me and noticed how much more productive I was, I just fell into lots of conversations with people about it. And it turned out everybody else was struggling too. And it was actually quite a big revelation to me that there was all these other people out there that were struggling with things that I'd just been struggling with and wanted advice on. So that's really where Think Productive and my book Productivity Ninja came from, was just this idea of there's just so much wasted energy going on by the fact that people are doing things in really suboptimal ways or not getting that clarity with themselves. And so I would still say that like I fall into the traps of my natural personality style regularly, and that's okay. And so one of the 9 characteristics of the Productivity Ninja is a ninja is human and not superhero. There are times when you do all these things really well and everyone else in your office will look at you like you have some kind of special power and like you're some kind of superhero. But underneath all of that, what you really are is just a human being with good tools and good skills. And so, that for me is a really powerful message, because it means that any human can reach the point of feeling and looking like a superhero in the work they do. But it also means we should be kind to ourselves when we inevitably screw that up sometimes, right? And it doesn't always go to plan. And so, like I have good days and bad days, but I think, in general terms, the benefit and the curse of the work that I do is it's like a giant rod for my own back. Like I'm the productivity guy, so I always have to, kind of maintain those standards, and that's a wonderful thing in many ways, and it's also occasionally a very frustrating thing too.
Well, you mentioned that a productivity ninja is a human with good tools and skills. Do you have any tools then that you would recommend as the arsenal of a productivity ninja?
Yeah, a couple of things that are, I think, really important to mention. So one is having a really good tool for the second brain, having a really good tool to hold project and action information. The one I'm using right now is Nozbe, Nozbe, which I've used for many years. I think Todoist is also really good as another tool that does very similar things. And there are actually quite a few that will give you that level of functionality. What you're really looking for is functionality around projects and actions, being able to categorize things both under the project that they need to be part of and also the context of where you need to do things. The other one, which I'd say is probably a slightly more underrated app or tool around productivity, is some kind of app that helps you with your relationship with your phone. I think this is just really important territory. I released Productivity Ninja in 2014, and then we did a 5-year anniversary kind of rewrite, and then re-released that just about a year ago. And so people were asking me in my publishers, what's changed in productivity in 5 years? And my answer was basically nothing, except the phone has changed everything, right? And if you think back to 2012, 2013, 2014, people had phones and people started to have smartphones, but the level of addiction and compulsion to use the device was not what it is now. So I think having some kind of app that helps with your relationship with your phone is really important. I'm on Android, and the app that I'm using is called Quality Time. If you're on iPhone, the one I probably recommend is Freedom. There's another one called Off Time. But basically what these apps do is allow you to basically restrict access to the more distracting apps at different times of the day. So for me, it's about saying, right, when I'm in that morning proactive attention mode, I really want to be heads down. I don't want access to YouTube. I don't want access to Twitter. I don't want access to Instagram. And actually, I don't want access to Google Chrome and the internet. I can get the internet somewhere else if there's something urgent, but I don't want those temptations of kind of, just messing about, curiously kind of searching on my phone or distracting myself with lots of, YouTube videos and things like that.
So what else should our viewers know about you, about your projects that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I've just started a new mailing list, which is called Rev Up for the Week. So every Sunday, I'm sending an email with basically one positive thought or idea for the week ahead. So you can either check it out on the Sunday evening, or if you're being a good boy or girl, you can check it out on Monday morning when you first get your email. But if you want to sign up to that, just go to grahamallcott.com, and you'll see at the bottom of the page there's like a little form to fill in. That's my Rev Up for the Week email. We mentioned Beyond Busy before, so that's my podcast where I'm interviewing people about productivity and work-life balance and how they define happiness. My company is Think Productive. So thinkproductive.com, and that will link you to whichever part of the world you're in. Oh, the other thing it might be worth mentioning is we put together a whole bunch of resources and some free webinars for people around working from home. So if you go to thinkproductive.com/WFH for work from home, there's a whole bunch of free resources on there, including we've shared our comms manifesto. So like our kind of ground rules around how we use Slack, how we use email internally within the business as well. So, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there that, people have just found really helpful over this period, and it's all just freely available. There's also a few of the webinars are still happening as well. So feel free to jump on those.
Amazing. We'll definitely link all of them in the description box below. So thank you, Graham, for having sat down with us.
Thanks for doing what you do and sharing good messages around productivity. I think it's very much needed, especially at the moment.
And there you have it, our conversation with Graham Allcott, the productivity guy. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe and give this video a like if you enjoyed what Graham was talking about, and see you next week.